Hello, my name is Abigail Morgan, and for as long as I can remember, I've been the daughter cropped out of my own family's picture. I worked hard, built my own success, and even secretly supported my parents and siblings, only to be told at their anniversary dinner that I wasn't invited. That night, they called me a beggar without ever knowing the so called beggar had been paying their bills. If this kind of story resonates with you, please like, share, and subscribe. Your support helps us keep telling the stories that matter. Let's begin. In every family photograph, I am the one cropped out even when I paid for the frame. The glossy pictures that hung in my parents' colonial-style home always looked perfect from a distance, polished smiles matching outfits, the illusion of harmony. But behind the frames, there was always a shadow shaped like me, the daughter who never quite fit the name that was spoken like a footnote. I remember standing stiffly in front of the Christmas tree, 10 years old, holding the family dog in my arms, while my brother Ethan and my sister Victoria posed effortlessly. My father adjusted Ethan's tie. My mother brushed imaginary lint off Victoria's dress. No one noticed my shoes were 2 sizes too small, pinching my toes, or that I had been up all night finishing a sketchbook of drawings they never asked to see. The camera flashed. Later, when the photo was printed, I found myself half cut off at the edge. My father framed it anyway, proudly displaying the golden children in the center. I remained the ghost along the margins. College was no easier. Ethan's tuition was paid in full, complete with a shiny red convertible waiting for him on campus. Victoria's med school apartment came fully furnished, courtesy of my parents' generosity. I, on the other hand, worked 3 jobs, juggled ramen packets with overdue textbooks, and spent one night in the emergency room after collapsing from exhaustion. I never asked them for a dime, not even when the bills piled higher than my courage. Somehow, I still graduated. Somehow I built a life that didn't collapse under the weight of their indifference. Now in the autumn of 2023, my life looked nothing like the forgotten corners of those photographs. The modern 2-story home I had designed for myself gleamed with glass walls and clean lines, a sharp contrast to my parents' aging colonial mansion a few miles away. Inside, my company thrived. Creative Vision. The agency I had built from the ground up was pulling 7 figures annually, its projects displayed across billboards in New York, Toronto, Los Angeles. A team of 28 people called me their boss. My father still introduced me at family events as our daughter Abigail without title, without acknowledgement, as though designer were too fragile a word to speak aloud. And yet, despite the silence, I kept giving. Quietly. When Charles and Linda's mortgage weighed heavier after my father's forced retirement, I covered it through anonymous transfers disguised as retirement supplements, $3,000 every month for 3 years. When Ethan stumbled under divorce and debt, I arranged a fake loan forgiveness program that erased $80,000 from his name. Victoria's dream house. $50,000 sent through a lawyer who posed it as a medical professional grant. They had no idea the beggar in their eyes was the benefactor behind their survival. That week, I sat at my sleek white desk, scrolling through flights for my parents' 35th anniversary. They had once whispered about seeing Alaska, hushed voices over wine glasses, dismissing it as fantasy. So I made it real. Dog sledding glacier tours, aurora lights, all prepaid. $8,000 wrapped into 2 tickets, tucked neatly into a silver envelope. I sealed it with a ribbon that matched the navy silk of the dress I had chosen, a dress that shimmered like the hope I wasn't ready to abandon. The house was quiet as I prepared the gift, the golden leaves outside fluttering like confetti against the glass. For once, I let myself imagine that maybe things could be different. Maybe my parents would see me not as an outsider, not as the rebellious daughter who chose art over finance or medicine, but as a woman who had carved success out of rejection. Maybe they would smile with something other than polite discomfort when they unwrapped the tickets. Maybe they would see me. A soft chime pulled me from my thoughts, an email notification. My cousin Rachel's name lit up the screen. "See you at dinner, cousin." The words glowed like an invitation I had long waited for. My breath caught. They had told me nothing. No formal invite, no call. But Rachel's note, warm, casual, inclusive, was proof. At last, I thought they wanted me there. I set the envelope down, heart hammering, and stood before my mirror. The navy dress hugged my frame, elegant and commanding. I swept my hair into a twist, pinned it with silver, and clasped earrings that whispered of success earned, not given. I slipped the envelope into my clutch, the paper cool against my palm, and whispered to my reflection, my voice low but steady. Perhaps this would be the night they finally welcomed me back into the family, the night the outsider was cropped back into the frame. Perhaps. I tightened my grip on the gift and breathed deep-tasting anticipation and dread in the same breath. The world outside was fading into twilight, and I was about to step into the one place where light had always been rationed for me. Perhaps this would be the night of reconciliation, or perhaps it would be the night I learned once and for all that reconciliation was a fantasy. I slipped on my heels, walked to the door, and whispered one more time as though fate itself were listening. Maybe this is the last night they'll ever see me. The hostess's smile vanished the moment she read my name. Her manicured finger hovered over the glowing tablet, scanning a list that apparently excluded me. For a heartbeat, her expression faltered, the polished mask of customer service cracking into discomfort. "I'm sorry," she said, voice soft but edged with finality. "You're not on the guest list." My clutch felt heavier in my hand. The silver envelope pressed against my palm like a weight threatening to pull me under. "There must be some mistake," I replied, forcing a light laugh that tasted bitter. "It's my parents' anniversary celebration. Charles and Linda Morgan. I'm their daughter." The woman hesitated, then shook her head. "I'm afraid your name isn't here." Behind her, through the open doorway, I saw what I had hoped for all week: my family. My father regal in charcoal gray, my mother radiant in silver glasses raised in a toast. Ethan and Victoria stood beside them, glowing in their spouses' shadows, while guests mingled around the mahogany tables beneath chandeliers that rained golden light. Their laughter floated out like music I had been barred from hearing. The sight twisted in my chest. I took a step forward, steadying my voice. "It's clearly a clerical error. I'll just go speak to them." The hostess shifted lips, parting to object, but I was already moving past heels clicking across marble. My presence rippled through the room like a drop of ink in clear water. Conversations stuttered and stilled. My mother was the first to see me. Her smile froze the color draining from her face. She clutched my father's arm, whispering with a speed born of panic. He turned, eyes narrowing as if the champagne had suddenly soured in his glass. "Abigail," he said, voice pitched to carry. "What are you doing here?" Dozens of eyes fell on me. I clutched the gift tighter, the ribbon biting into my skin. "It's your anniversary. Why wouldn't I be here?" "This is for close family." My mother chimed in, sweetened words dripping poison. "We didn't expect you." "Close family?" The words landed like knives. Ethan dropped his gaze to his shoes. Victoria fiddled with her bracelet. Neither spoke. I even helped with the arrangements. I protested, desperation bleeding through my calm. "There's no mistake," my father said, stepping closer, his stare like steel. "You are not invited." A hush fell. Guests exchanged glances, discomfort flickering across painted faces. Mrs. Patterson from my mother's bridge club shifted uneasily, while Dr. Anderson stared hard into his wine as though the glass held answers. I swallowed hard and held out the silver box. "I brought you something. For your anniversary. A trip you always dreamed of, Alaska. My mother didn't reach for it." "You can leave it with the others," she murmured, dismissing the effort, the money, the heart behind it. The air thickened. Whispers rose like smoke around me. "Isn't she the daughter who... Didn't she fund?" Their words tangled into a chorus of speculation. My father's face flushed, whether from embarrassment or rage I couldn't tell. "Security," he barked. "Remove this person." The tall guard at the door hesitated, confusion flickering. "Sir," she said, "she's your daughter. Get this beggar out of here." The words cracked like a whip echoing off crystal and wood. Gasps rippled through the room. Even the guard flinched. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. Beggar. As though the thousands I'd poured into their lives, the mortgage, the grants, the forgiveness, none of it existed. I looked at Ethan, at Victoria, begging silently for someone to speak to stop this humiliation. They lowered their eyes, complicit in silence. My hand trembled as I set the gift on the table of wrapped boxes. The silver ribbon gleamed mockingly under the chandelier light. Straightening my spine, I lifted my chin and forced my voice to remain steady. Enjoy your evening. Gasps and whispers trailed me as I crossed the room. My heels struck the marble like hammers, each step heavier than the last. The security guard shifted aside, reluctant, as though ashamed to enforce the command. I passed him without a glance, the door closing behind me with a finality that felt like exile. The cold November air slapped my face. Outside, the river shimmered in the distance, mocking me with its indifferent beauty. I stood on the pavement, breath-shaking mascara threatening to streak. My reflection in the restaurant's glass was elegant, composed, yet inside I was a storm collapsing. I inhaled sharply, clutching my coat around me. The word still burned in my ears, beggar. My father had cast me out in front of 30 witnesses, stripped me of dignity with a single cruel syllable. I turned from the glowing windows and muttered into the night voice laced with steel I hadn't known I possessed. Let's see who the beggar really is. The humiliation was brutal, but cutting off $62,000 overnight? That was even more brutal. The glow from my laptop screen painted the dark office in cold light. Outside the wide window, the suburban street lay still, every porch quiet, every lamp humming with serenity. Inside, my glass of red wine trembled slightly in my grip as I clicked through folder after folder, each one documenting years of generosity my family had never known or cared to know came from me. The numbers stared back merciless. $3,000 every month neatly deposited into my parents' account for retirement. That had added up to $36,000 a year, more than $100,000 over 3 years. $50,000 wired to Victoria through an attorney I'd hired to disguise it as a grant for medical professionals. $80,000 in student loans wiped away from Ethan's balance sheet under the fabricated guise of bank forgiveness. $12,000 more across subscription services, landscapers, a housekeeper, even the meal deliveries my mother boasted about to friends. And the $22,000 for tonight's celebration, the one I wasn't welcome to attend. Add the Alaska trip, $8,000, and the total became obscene. $200,000 poured into them, unacknowledged, unthanked. Rachel's message buzzed across my phone. Where are you? They told everyone you had an emergency at work. Lies spreading like wildfire. My jaw tightened. An emergency, all right. I thought fingers already moving. I opened my banking portal. The standing order labeled pension supplement blinked at me. I hovered for a moment, then clicked cancel. The system asked, "Are you sure?" Yes. I was more certain than I had been of anything in years. One by one, the pillars of their comfort crumbled beneath my mouse. The landscaping service terminated. The bi-weekly housekeeping canceled. The insurance premiums withdrawn. The remaining $30,000 still due to Victoria stopped before another cent reached her. A message drafted itself in my head. Let Ethan's pride and Victoria's perfectionism buy your safety net now. Then came the party bill. I contacted the event planner, voice calm professional. Please note my contribution of $22,000 is withdrawn. The balance is the host's responsibility. Amanda hesitated on the line, panic bleeding into her words. But the event is happening. Then collect from them, not me. I hung up. Finally, the travel agent. I need to cancel the Alaska trip. Yes, both tickets. Yes, full refund. The clerk tried politeness, but I cut her off. Family emergency. That much at least was true. The screen glowed with confirmations. In total, $62,000 pulled back in a single night. My hand steadied as I pressed confirm. It was not spite. It was arithmetic. For every insult, a subtraction. For every humiliation, a withdrawal. My phone vibrated violently against the desk. First, a voicemail. My father's voice sharp with drunken authority. Fix this now. Another followed, slurred, furious. Do you know what you've done? They're threatening to charge us. Then softer ones. Tremors of panic breaking through Abigail. Please call us back. Your mother is crying. Don't do this. Dozens piled in angry pleading, alternating between demand and desperation. My hand closed around the stem of my glass. I took a slow sip, savoring the burn of the wine, and set the phone face down. The vibrations rattled against the wood like distant thunder. I let them ring. Tonight, I would not be their savior nor their scapegoat. Tonight, I was the one pulling the strings. Last night, I was a beggar. This morning, I was their only lifeline. The sunlight spilled through the floor-to-ceiling windows of my apartment, golden and calm, utterly indifferent to the chaos vibrating through my phone. It lay face down on the counter, buzzing every few seconds, each tremor announcing another voicemail, another desperate plea. I poured coffee into a porcelain mug, added a splash of cream, and carried it to the balcony. The city stretched quiet below me, leaves crisp in the November air. For once, the silence belonged to me. When I finally unlocked the phone, the storm unfurled. My father's voice sharp as broken glass. "You'll regret this stunt, Abigail. Undo it now, or you're no daughter of mine." Then Linda sobbing, "We can't cover the mortgage, sweetheart. Please don't do this to us." Ethan clipped and angry, "You've gone too far. Do you want to see Dad collapse from stress?" Victoria, icy as ever, "This is childish revenge. Fix it before you ruin what's left of our family." The messages shifted like waves, rage, blame, then begging. By the 10th voicemail, Charles was no longer shouting. His voice cracked. "They're calling about collections already. Don't you care that we could lose everything?" I sipped my coffee, steady detached. Last night, I had been humiliated in front of 30 people. This morning, they were the ones stripped bare. At 11, Rachel appeared at my office, cheeks flushed from the cold. She didn't wait to be announced. She strode straight in her concern, outweighing courtesy. "Abigail," she said, dropping her purse onto the chair across from my desk. "They told everyone you had some work emergency." Was that a lie? I studied her face, earnest searching. It wasn't just a lie, I said evenly. It was a cover-up. They didn't want anyone to know I showed up, and they threw me out. Her eyes widened. "They threw you out in front of 30 guests, after calling me a beggar, after 3 years of me paying their mortgage, Ethan's loans, Victoria's down payment." The words tumbled out with clinical precision. I watched as Rachel's shock solidified into something heavier. You've been the one keeping them afloat." I nodded. "Over $200,000, Rachel. All hidden. And they still cut me out like I was a stranger." She pressed a hand over her mouth, voice trembling. They never said a word. They made it sound like Ethan and Victoria were the ones helping. "Because that fit their story better," I said. Golden children, perfect lives, and me the disappointment. The truth would ruin their little narrative. She leaned forward, gripping my desk. "Abby, this is insane." But her voice softened, "I believe you. And I'll keep it quiet, whatever you decide to do." I exhaled, tension loosening from my chest. For the first time in years, someone from my family believed me. A single ally in the storm. But the peace was short-lived. That afternoon, while my team bustled through client presentations, the receptionist buzzed my office. Her voice wavered. "Ms. Morgan, there's a man downstairs. He says he's your father. He's demanding to see you." My stomach tightened, but my voice stayed level. "Tell him I'm unavailable." 10 minutes later, the door burst open. Charles Morgan, always immaculate in tailored suits, now stood disheveled, tie-loose eyes, bloodshot rage and desperation clashing in every line of his face. "What did you do?" He shouted, his fists clenching at his sides. "You've destroyed us. The mortgage company is calling. The restaurant billed me $22,000. Do you have any idea what you've done?" I didn't rise from my chair. I met his fury with calm steel. "No, Father. I didn't destroy you. I simply stopped saving you." For a moment, silence swallowed the room. His mouth opened, then closed again, searching for words that wouldn't come. The receptionist's voice broke through the intercom. "Ms. Morgan, he refuses to leave the lobby. He says he'll wait all night." I tapped the button, my tone ice. "Then call security." The words hung in the air, heavy, sharp. His face drained of color as if the mirror of humiliation had been turned back on him. This time, he was the unwanted guest. This time, he was the one being escorted out. He called me a beggar. I handed him the bill. The boardroom at Creative Vision was stripped of warmth, white walls, sleek glass table-framed awards, gleaming like sharp edges under the recessed lights. I chose this room deliberately. Here I was the authority. Here every inch of space spoke of my work, not theirs. My father sat stiffly at one end of the table, his anger worn down into brittle pride. His suit was immaculate again, pressed into submission, but his eyes carried sleepless nights. You think this is justice? He snapped, his voice echoing in the sterile room. Pulling money, humiliating your own parents? Petty revenge, Abigail. That's all this is. I didn't flinch. I slid a leather folder across the glass. Revenge implies malice, I said quietly. This is arithmetic. He frowned, hesitated, then flipped it open. Neatly stacked pages spilled out mortgage statements stamped paid by my account. Insurance receipts. Wire transfers labeled grant disbursement. Tuition and loan forgiveness paperwork with Ethan's name bold at the top. The catering invoice for the Riverside Grill, $22,000 highlighted in yellow. Each line a silent witness. Color drained from his face. You. The single word rasped from his throat like sandpaper. Every cent, I answered. The mortgage you couldn't cover after early retirement. Ethan's debts. Victoria's down payment. Even the champagne you raised your glass with the night you called me a beggar. His hand shook as he pressed the receipts back into the folder. Why would you? Because family supports each other, I cut in voice sharp as glass, even when it isn't recognized. Even when it isn't reciprocated. And yet you still looked at me like I was worthless. You stood in front of your friends and spat the word beggar. The door creaked. I didn't turn, but I caught the reflection in the glass wall. Victoria frozen halfway inside, lips parted, eyes darting between me and our father. She had heard enough. Victoria, Charles said hoarsely, half rising. But she didn't move closer. Her face had gone pale, the truth settling in like ice water. At that moment, my phone lit up, Ethan's name flashing insistently. I let it ring, the shrill sound filling the silence. When it went to voicemail, his voice erupted, frantic and disbelieving. Abby, is it true I just found out about the loans? Tell me this isn't true. Tell me Dad didn't... His voice cracked before cutting off. I leaned forward, pinning Charles with my stare. The beggar you threw out of your dinner. She bought that dinner. She bought your roof, your reputation, your fragile illusion of control. For a long moment, no one breathed. Then Charles collapsed into the chair, shoulders sagging as if the weight of years had finally crushed him. His chest heaved, lips trembling, but no defense came. The mighty patriarch looked suddenly small, a man hollowed out by the very daughter he had dismissed. He pressed a hand to his forehead, whispering more to himself than to me. What will your mother say? When she knows the words hung in the air, heavy, desperate, a signal that the reckoning had only just begun. For years, I begged for a place in their portrait. Now I paint my own. 2 weeks had passed since the night I turned my back on them, 2 weeks since I had laid the receipts bare and forced my father into silence. The Morgans were no longer in the sprawling colonial house with its manicured lawn and gleaming brass door. That house was gone, sold off like a crown jewel pawned in desperation. Tonight, I walked into their new condo, smaller, quieter, stripped of the grandeur they once clung to like armor. The walls were bare, the furniture modest, the air heavy with resignation. My mother sat at the dining table, her hands folded tight, knuckles white. She looked up when I entered, and for the first time in my life, there was no pretense in her eyes, only exhaustion and something rawer. Abigail, she said softly. I was jealous. I gave up my dream of becoming a doctor, and I told myself it was noble that raising a family was enough. But every time you succeeded without us, it cut me. You lived the life I was too afraid to reach for. The words hung between us, heavy but real. My father said nothing, only stared at his plate. His once booming presence had shrunk, leaving behind a man who looked suddenly old, stripped of the power he had wielded like a weapon. Across the table, Ethan cleared his throat. He wouldn't meet my eyes. We played the roles they wanted, Abby. The golden son, the perfect daughter. It kept the peace. But it strangled us, too. I'm divorced, buried in a career I never wanted. Victoria's drowning under the weight of being flawless. We were complicit. His voice cracked. We stayed silent when we should have defended you. Victoria shifted in her chair, face pale but earnest. It was easier to let you be the scapegoat. And I'm sorry for that. I looked at each of them, my pulse steady, my breath even. I don't want apologies, I said. I want boundaries. Respect me or lose me, but never again will you use me. Silence followed. For once, no one argued. No one dismissed me with condescension. They sat with the truth because there was nowhere left to run. I rose, pushing my chair back. Being family doesn't mean I owe you my life. It doesn't mean sacrificing myself so you can keep pretending. My words were sharp, but they didn't tremble. I walked out to the balcony, the hum of the city alive beneath me, lights scattered like constellations across the skyline. The night air was cool against my skin cleansing. I placed my hands on the railing and whispered into the dark. I'm free even if freedom means standing alone. Behind me, the condo remained quiet, the family portrait forever altered. For the first time, it was my brush, my canvas, my terms. For years, Abigail had begged for a place in her family's portrait only to be erased time and time again. But when the truth came out, the roles reversed, and the so-called beggar stood taller than them all. Justice, she learned, isn't always loud. Sometimes it's the quiet strength of walking away. And perhaps the greatest freedom is realizing you no longer need the approval of those who once defined your worth. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and comment your thoughts below. Type 1 if you resonate with this story.